Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Inside New York City's Infrastructure Upgrade, a special live event brought to you by the B1M in partnership with Autodesk. I'm Fred Mills from the B1M. I'm going to be your host for today, but I'm not alone because I'm joined by a fantastic panel of experts who we're going to meet in just a few moments' time. So without further ado, let's meet our expert panel. Let's get them to introduce themselves to you. Sorry, it's a good start. There we go. First of all, we have Maria Lehman, who's joining us from the American Society of Civil Engineers, actually the upcoming president-elect of the ASCE. Maria, can you give us a bit of background on who you are and your role?
Sure. Thanks, Fred. I am incoming president-elect with ASCE. I have about 40 years in the business. I have 10 on the public side as a client and 30 on the consulting side. I'm a professional engineer in many states, and I've worked on local small projects up through being the project executive on the Mario Cuomo Bridge. For a couple of years, risk manager as well. So I've seen everything from the very small local to the big mega project. And I work for GHD. I'm head of infrastructure and do a lot of trying to prognosticate how things are coming out of Washington these days. I've served on the infrastructure committee and the report card 2 cycles. I was one of the spokespeople in this cycle. So I have all the counts and the amounts as far as the bill and what our infrastructure really looks like right now. Thank you.
That's fantastic. You're bringing extraordinary insights to this. We really appreciate you being here. And Craig, you're joining us from Amtrak.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I am Craig Schultz. I've been with Amtrak for 9 years. Before Amtrak, I was in communications. I was a journalist, worked up and down the Northeast corridor in Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. Also spent some time in Michigan. Since I've been with Amtrak, have handled a bunch of issues up and down the corridor. I am based in I live in the Philadelphia area. I'm based in New York. So I travel through the Gateway Tunnel and through the Gateway program territory every day. I walk the walk, or I ride the ride, as I like to say. I've worked on a bunch of high-profile projects with Amtrak. I was involved with the Train 188 derailment, unfortunately, a few years ago, which was a major event, obviously, for Amtrak, and have been working on Gateway specifically here for the past 5 or 6 years. And really in 2014 and 2015, when things started to sort of shift, we've had a number of outages in the tunnel, and it's really taken off a lot since then. So very happy to be here, and thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Absolutely. No, fantastic to have you here, Craig. Again, thanks for bringing your insight to the table. Then we also have Yaz, who's joining us from Autodesk. How are you doing, Yaz?
Good. Thank you, Fred. So quick introduction about myself. My name is Yaz Shakara. I'm a construction solution executive here at Autodesk. I joined Autodesk coming from the construction industry. I was working with various general contractors and subcontractors on projects ranging between $5.5 billion to $100 million projects. And I'm now moved into the tech sector so that I can influence the construction industry, working with infrastructure, vertical buildings and clients to help them implement and find solutions that in a way that they can work more effectively and stay competitive and change some of the culture in our construction tech. So I'm really excited to join this intelligent panelist and hear more thoughts about today's webinar.
It's fantastic. Thanks for being with us. As you can see, when I say we have a great panel, I wasn't kidding. We've got a really good lineup today, and I'm relieved they're all here, frankly, because they are better experts in this area than I am. So it's good to have their insight. Now, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that the US has just passed is a really landmark event, but it's not just good for the American society, American economy, and people's way of life. It's also created a whole economy for those of us who create YouTube videos about construction for a living. So even just in the last few months, a couple of months actually, we've got 4 different pieces that we've covered on infrastructure in the US and specifically in and around New York City. So we've got a piece on the Hudson Tunnel. We've got a 8-minute look at a 2,700-page infrastructure bill, which was not an easy video to put together, but it's quite a good, engaging visual summary of a document that is probably incredibly boring to read were you to read the whole thing. You should go and read the whole thing, I should say. You should do your homework properly, but if you want to kind of skip the points and get the gist, we've got a YouTube video on it. There's also the East Side Access Project, which is a huge piece of work that's happening underneath Grand Central Station, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. And also released just earlier today in partnership with Autodesk, a piece on the 2nd Avenue subway, which again is a huge scheme that's taking place beneath many of your feet in Manhattan. So do go and have a look at those. Shameless plug over. Let's get into the substance of today. Now, in case you've been living under a rock, America has passed a $1.2 trillion massive infrastructure bill. I think it's worth saying, I think a lot of the media that many of us consume these days is a bit hyperbolic. You can feel a bit exaggerated sometimes. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is a truly historic and landmark moment for the US, for both parties to come together and pass a bill of this magnitude that's going to make a difference in this many areas to this many people's lives is genuinely a very big deal. So I don't think it's being exaggerated in the press. This is a huge moment for the country. Now, in that bill are all kinds of things. There's things like road upgrades, bridges, rail upgrades, something like $66 billion going to Amtrak. As you know, the president himself is quite a big fan of Amtrak and the rail network. Water utilities and utility upgrades. There's also things like rural electrification, broadband, cyber security, airport upgrades, flood prevention, things associated with climate change, you name it, electric cars, Hyperloop. It's all kind of in this fantastic bill that's just been passed. So this is a broad thing. It was going to make a big difference to many people's lives across the country. Now, there's a saying that goes, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And it's kind of the same with infrastructure projects, to be honest. If you can deliver an infrastructure project in New York City, you can probably deliver an infrastructure project anywhere. Such as the constraints, pressures and challenges that go with building in this city and the boroughs around it. We're going to talk a bit about the challenges in a moment. And the idea from today is that we really talk about what New York is going through and some of the challenges there, in a way that those of you watching outside of New York, in a different state or even in a different country, can learn from and build upon in your own projects as your governments or systems around the world invest in infrastructure upgrades. Now, just to look at some of the key projects that are currently happening at the moment in New York, even before the US infrastructure bill was passed, the Gateway program, which Craig alluded to earlier, which we're going to talk about a bit in just a moment. Huge project, and really underlines New York's position as a linchpin on the Northeast corridor, particularly from a rail perspective for people traveling from Boston down to New York, Philadelphia, and even down to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. So this project, I think, really distills the power of infrastructure. This one tunnel under the Hudson connects the whole thing and is incredibly important. It's crumbling. It's been in need of an upgrade for a very long time. The idea here is they're going to build a new tunnel next to the old tunnel, divert traffic through the new tunnel while the old tunnel is upgraded, and then open both tunnels so we have increased capacity under the Hudson from a rail perspective. I have massively simplified that project right there, but we're going to hear from Craig in a minute. He's going to talk about some of the complexities around it. So Gateway alone is an enormous piece. East Side Access Project, which I mentioned, a rather small $11 billion scheme that's happening right underneath Grand Central Station, down where many of us wouldn't even see or notice, bringing the Long Island Railroad through from Harold Interlocking down into Grand Central Station, right in the middle of Manhattan, navigating all kinds of underground infrastructure, not to mention that iconic station above ground that has to remain operational, functional, and undisturbed at all times. So again, massive projects. It's not just rail, there's airports as well. LaGuardia is kind of the kind of poster boy for this, because it's getting a very big upgrade. There's all sorts of things going on there, but there is also funding allocated in the bill for other airports across New York State. So LaGuardia, as I said, really the poster boy for a wider airport upgrade across New York. And finally, 2nd Avenue subway, which I mentioned earlier, which is a subway line, funnily enough, under 2nd Avenue, connecting downtown Lower Manhattan all the way up to Harlem, 125th Street. Phase 1 has been completed so far. There's now plans to approach and develop Phase 2. Again, an extraordinarily complex project happening under what is one of the world's busiest and most congested cities, with existing underground infrastructure, bedrock to tunnel through New Yorkers on their commutes to navigate, which will makes it rather complicated. So just there, a flavour of some of the things that are currently happening in New York and some of the challenges that go with them. As I said, we're going to hear in a bit we're going to hear in a bit some more detail about each of those and other projects and the challenges that are being faced. As I said, New York City is representative of what many cities in America are now faced with upgrading infrastructure. And the hope from today is that some of the learnings and experiences you're going to hear about in just a moment can be applied to other states, but also other cities around the world. So do stay tuned for that. Now, we're going to hear from Yaz, who's going to talk to us from Autodesk about really how some of their software is enabling infrastructure projects like this, and is going to play a role in helping construction teams, quite frankly, get through and deliver and navigate some of these projects over the next days, weeks, and years to come.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'll be giving you a quick overview about Autodesk Construction Cloud and how Build can help with the challenges of an infrastructure project. The first challenge that comes to my mind is accessibility. As we all know, on any infrastructure project, accessing Wi-Fi or internet is usually a challenge. But since Build is a cloud-based platform, you'll be able to access all the information and data in an online and offline capacity, whether you're in the office or in the field with your phone and tablet. The main goal of Build is to establish a common data environment that's going to act as a single source of truth for all the stakeholders on the project. And this common data environment is purposely built for our industry. The reason I'm saying this is because you can natively view more than 42 file types. These 42 file types are the most commonly used file types in our industry. Things like Autodesk products, other products like Microsoft Office and Word, and you'll be able to view also competitor softwares like MicroStation, which is heavily used in infrastructure, and you'll be able to access all the metadata and the geometrical data of these files. So like you see on the screen right now, you can view the 3D model. You can also view the CAD files and all the metadata behind them. And in order to have a common data environment for all stakeholders, that common data environment needs to be a low trust environment. So you'll be able to control permissions on various levels, whether it's on a project level or on a folder level. You'll be able to also manage other aspects and other workflows all in one place. So now that you can manage document management and you have your common data environment, then you can extend into other workflows. Things like QA/QC and quality control. So you have the reactive approach with QA/QC, with managing issues all in one place. So you have a unified log for all the issues coming from the sheets or coming from other places of the platform. You'll be also able to manage checklists, whether you want to do a proactive approach with standardized procedures or manage inspections, for example. You'll be able to manage that from one place. Since you have a single source of truth, you also can reflect the latest and greatest set of documents to everyone on the project. So everyone on the field can access the latest revisions of the drawings. They can also collaborate on these drawings, because one of our focuses is having connected workflows. So the team members can add as-built, grid lines, and you have collaboration tools that you can connect with other workflows. So if you add this markup, for example, you can connect this markup to an RFI, and they can click on the RFI, and the platform will directly take them to that RFI. So that gives you a level of accessibility and transparency in the field where people don't have to look for information and waste time on that. So you'll be able to also pin certain photos or pictures. You'll be able to be conducting your punch list in the field. So you can do that all from one place. And you have that collaborative environment that is linked to other workflows. You'll also be able to manage other contractual deliverables like RFIs, submittals, meeting minutes, progress tracking, and access the schedule for the project all from the common data environment. But also for infrastructure projects, photos and pictures are really important, especially that infrastructure projects tends to be horizontal projects. And with photos, usually photos tell the story, and the progress tells the story of any problems that happens maybe 6 months down, 6 months, 3 months down the road, you can refer back to them and see all the details. So you have a full timeline of all the photos taken on the project, but you also provided a map since we capture the GPS coordinates of where these photos are taken. So take this example here. Multiple photos were taken, but it's showing you exactly with a GPS coordinate where these photos were taken. So that'll be really helpful for any big infrastructure project. You'll also be able to utilize reports and insights, which is a big advantage since you're going to have an operations room within our insights and dashboards. So that way, if you have any other third-party service, you can take advantage of our partner cards. So if you want to see the model, for example, you can have configurable dashboards that you can just drag and drop. Point cloud, for example, is huge for infrastructure and horizontal projects, since with point cloud, you can capture existing conditions and then you can do your work. Maybe you have a job site camera that you want to be able to see every morning. Maybe you have some GIS services like Esri, for example. We do have integration with that. So you pretty much have a full operation room in one place, in addition to insightful real-time data with our dashboards. So you can have your own dashboard or design dashboard, as you can see on the left hand of the screen. So maybe you want to see insights into your submittals or outstanding issues, RFIs. It's all going to be in one place. So you have full level of transparency. You can have a quick health check on the project. So hopefully this was a quick, informative overview. I only had like 5 minutes to give you this walkthrough. We will be having a poll coming up after this demo. So if you want to sign up for an in-depth demonstration, please sign up with our poll. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's really, really informative. I think it's really worth saying that collaboration tools like that, especially on infrastructure projects, are invaluable when you've got teams spread and working across huge geographic areas. Sometimes they really do play a part. So thanks for taking us through it. Right, we are just going to skip to the poll. Forgive me. There we go. As Yaz said, there is a poll. So if you'd like a free demonstration, a free personalized demonstration of Autodesk builds from Yaz or one of his colleagues, I believe. It might not be from Yaz. I can't guarantee it's going to be Yaz. But Yaz or one of his colleagues, do let us know. And there's a poll that's just been launched now. It's literally a yes-no poll. It's not a difficult one. I'm going to leave that open for the whole webinar. So get your votes coming in. I can see votes coming in already, which is absolutely fantastic. So thanks, guys. Do get your votes coming in there, and we'll pass that on to Autodesk. They'll contact you and you'll get a free demonstration. Now, back to today's infrastructure focus. I want to come back and bring in our panel and start talking about some of the challenges around delivering infrastructure in New York, which is what we've promised you. Craig, coming to you first of all. Sorry, I've got the poll is so fantastic that it's blocking my screen. There we go. The wonders of Zoom. Craig, coming to you first of all, we've touched on how Amtrak is crucial to the Northeast Corridor. Can you talk to us about why it's so important that New York City in particular upgrades its rail infrastructure?
Sure. Thanks, Fred, and again, thanks for having me here today. Yeah, look, New York is critically important. Obviously, it's, the economic capital, the media capital of the world. It's, New York City is New York City, right? I think, as you said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? It's hugely important to Amtrak also, not just from a Northeast Corridor standpoint, but some 2/3 of our trips really network-wide touch New York City, either originate, pass through, or terminate in New York. We own Penn Station in Midtown Manhattan. Amtrak owns the facility there. It's an important, the retail is a generator of revenue for us there. So Penn Station and New York City in general are hugely important, not just to Amtrak, but obviously to the nation. In terms of its infrastructure, New York really, in terms terms of its rail infrastructure, at least, is really still very much kind of, and really the Northeast Corridor entirely is still dependent very much on the original 1910 configuration that we are still living with today. Back 111 years ago, actually November 27th, 1910, the first trains ran across or under the Hudson River without having, people had to get off the train, switch to a ferry, get across the river, and that was so. You can imagine sort of the economic impact and sort of the return on investment that tunnel had back in 1910. We've been reaping the benefits for a century, and it is the two-track configuration is a bottleneck. Most of the Northeast Corridor is 4, 5, or 6 tracks. At its busiest point here between Newark and New Jersey and New York Penn Station is just 2 tracks that were built in 1910. We need to expand that capacity because New York City and its growth, really the demographic, the projections for growth in and around New York City economically very much are constrained really by the limits of the infrastructure. So by unleashing some of that potential, we very much have the potential to unleash some of that capacity by addressing the infrastructure needs of New York.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. 2/3 of all Amtrak journeys are touching or passing through New York at some point. It's extraordinary. When you say, the 1910 infrastructure, it's definitely long overdue, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, Maria, I want to bring you in as well because you've got extraordinary experience in delivering various projects in this part of the world. What makes building infrastructure in New York so especially challenging from your perspective?
I'm going to go back to some of the things you talked about, Fred. First of all, you're talking about whatever you're doing, you're replacing. It's not a green field, it's a brown field, and you're replacing, and you have to keep things running. Whether it's people or goods and services, everything has to continue running. Most of that infrastructure has been in place for more than 100 years. And so there's a lot of conflicts that, utilities, taking a look under a Manhattan street is pretty scary stuff because of how much is under there and how much is abandoned in place. I mean, it's not just about the active. There's also a lot abandoned in place that you don't know about. And then, you mentioned the bedrock and all the other things. So you have all these issues that are technical issues that you have to deal with it. Now you overlay that with the fact that when we did the Mario Cuomo Bridge, there was 29 separate unions involved. So we had a project labor agreement to establish when start and stop times are and how you get to the site, when your lunch is, because each agreement's a little different, right? And so you have to find a way to navigate all that. And then it's logistics. Every project in New York is a difficult technical project, but that pales compared to the logistics of getting manpower, people power, and equipment and supplies to where you're going. When you're out in a less dense area, railroads do it all the time. They build a bridge next to where they want to be and they roll it in. You can't do that in New York. So I think you have to look at the things like, again, when we did the Mario, you did prefabrication in all kinds of places and then use the river to bring it down and a big crane to put it in place. I mean, Legos for really big kids, right? So I think those are the kinds of things you have to look at because it's very complicated. The other thing that I think as we look moving forward is learning some of the lessons we did. First of all, it's very critical that we look at life cycle costing. Okay, it has to be built in. Maybe we spend a little bit more money up front, but make operations and maintenance more effective and efficient over the life cycle of the asset. We haven't done that as a country very well. And some of the mega projects have brought that to bear. And even during the construction period, it's made more sense to the project. The other thing is in life cycle, while we're on life cycle, that was the first 100-year design. Well, what does that mean? And who's going to be around to check that to make sure we did it right? Okay. So we've had a lot of assets in the past. We talk about the Amtrak tunnel. It served us well for 110 years, but it's tired. And so we need to be able to be resilient for the future. And the other thing that I think is really important that people don't realize is how you don't have to be prescriptive. With alternative delivery methods, we can actually do performance specifications as opposed to prescriptive specifications. So again, go back to what we did on Tappan Zee. There was a couple thousand pages of various codes and standards and things that you had to follow, and things that we wanted included in that bid. But there were 12 plan sheets, 12 for 3.6 mile bridge. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. This is where we did the environmental envelope. You're welcome to go out of that, but you have to deal with that. This is the nav channel. Have a nice day. That's how you get contractors and consultants to come up with good new designs and new ideas on how you'd be able to unleash the power. So as we're moving forward and we have this money that we see from the bill, we've got to be more effective and efficient on how we deliver projects.
As you say, there's challenges, but there's also opportunities that come from that as well, aren't they? There's a huge opportunity now to bring in some of these new approaches. I mean, are you finding that even though New York is known, as you say, for many of those challenges, is there now the appetite to see this, to get this done, to really push forward an infrastructure where there maybe hasn't been before?
I think there is, because I think there's cases of the mega projects that have been done in New York and quite frankly have been done in conjunction with federal agencies to be able to do that. It's very important that everybody partner. On the mega projects I've been involved with, there were weekly meetings with people that could make decisions on behalf of their agency so that you didn't get stuck in a quagmire because somebody couldn't make a decision. That has been a lot of what's delayed things. And so we have to look at working in parallel instead of in series, which is what we've done in the past. The other thing that I think is going to be really important is multi-agency planning, because we can't all be ripping up the same place at the same time. And what's downstream of what you're doing, for example, if you're talking resilience and flooding, is really important to consider for the system. So you might be MTA or you might be Amtrak, but you're using the drainage system of someone else. And so we have to coordinate that much better than we have in the past so that we can see, that bounce where it's really impacting all of our infrastructure as opposed to one at a time. And that's not how we've delivered projects in the past.
Absolutely. Now, don't forget, guys, we are going to answer some of your questions in a moment, so get them coming into the Q&A feature on Zoom. Also, don't forget to answer and respond to that poll. Although I'm saying that, we've had an 88% response rate to that poll, so I don't need to tell you guys because you know what you're doing. Now, I want to come and focus on to the Gateway program, because this is one of those extraordinary projects that I think speaks to infrastructure and its influence on so many millions of people that use it. Craig, obviously the North River tunnels that were constructed originally were almost built in a different age now. How is construction going to be different this time around on that project?
Yeah, so we've come a long way in many ways, in 110 years, and then in many ways, it's there's a lot there are a lot of components to it. I guess the first thing I think is important to note is the Gateway program is more than just the tunnel. It's more than just Penn Station, right? Gateway really is addressing that bottleneck that I was suggesting. The Northeast corridor, again, most of the corridor is 4, 5, or 6 tracks wide. Gateway really addresses the fact that at its busiest point, the NEC is just 2 tracks, right? And so what we're doing under Gateway is between Newark, the 10 miles, basically between Newark, New Jersey, and Penn Station, New York, we're taking that 2-track railroad and building 2 more tracks. It's pretty straightforward. Happens to be that we're going through the Meadowlands, we've got to build some bridges, we've got to build a tunnel, we've got to expand Penn Station itself in order to realize all the transformational benefits of Gateway. And that will really unlock, as I was saying earlier, some of that potential. This will be the first time we've built a rail tunnel under the Hudson River in 110 years. And it is going to be a technical challenge. And we have been doing a lot of engineering work leading up to, we're at 30% here. In fact, we have a series of geotech borings going on right now on the west side of Manhattan, where we're working to analyze the soil conditions underground. These are techniques and things that I don't think were available to Alexander Cassatt and his colleagues colleagues at the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1910. But amazingly, they used this shield-driven method, and they unbelievably joined these tunnels from both sides of the river, and they did it 111 years ago. Now, of course, we have tunnel boring machines and much more sophisticated equipment that will be leveraged here in a major way. I mean, this is a $12+ billion project. We are planning to, and a lot of this, again, as Maria was suggesting, the innovation is a critical component for us here. We really want to make sure that we are leaning on our contractor to deliver this project in the most efficient, cost-effective way, and so we want to make sure that we're allowing enough latitude for innovation and creativity. In the technical challenges we have, there are different rock formations, different types of rock between. It's a 3-mile roughly project. The tunnel starts in the Palisades under New Jersey for the first mile or so, which is very hard rock formation, and then goes under the Hudson River itself, which is very soft rock. And that really has implications for the tunnel boring machine. And so one of the questions that we'll be looking to the contractor as we get further down the road in terms of procurement and construction methods is, how are we going to navigate that? Do we need to use different tunnel boring machines? Can we swap out the drill head on, and so a lot of those factors are new, very much, the state-of-the-art techniques that weren't available to our forefathers back in 1910. So, but it's still going to be a massive undertaking. It is no small feat, and there will be a lot of unknowns that we, I'm sure, will uncover. No pun intended. As we move along. But as best we can, we're trying to identify and mitigate those unknowns as much as possible on the front end, so that we can deliver this as efficiently as possible.
Definitely. I was going to ask, what's it like at Amtrak at the minute? Because this is one of it's one of the biggest projects you've ever undertaken. Also, you've got kind of funding the likes of which you've never kind of seen before. Is it exciting, or is it kind of terrifying trying to gear up to do it, or kind of a bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's intimidating. They're very, very high expectations, and it's all good news. This is all to the good. I mean, for Amtrak, we've been around 50 years. This is our 50th year. We were created in 1971. We're celebrating 50 years, and we're really celebrating it by essentially, we've won ourselves 50 years worth of funding over the next 5 years, really, in this infrastructure bill, which is, that's a game changer. That's a game changer for us. And it is fantastically exciting, and we are very excited about delivering. It is also going to be a major challenge, to not just actually go and deliver, but manage expectations. Everybody's going to want that bridge built in a day, and we are working real hard here to put the pieces we need in place to go and deliver. We're building out the organization that we're going to need. We recently brought on a new executive vice president in charge of major program delivery, Laura Mason, who she's got a big mandate here and a lot of work to deliver, and we're all really excited about that opportunity, but certainly not blind to the challenges inherent in that also.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to bring in, you touched on the digital side, I want to bring in Yaz on this as well, because digital collaboration is going to play a huge part in enabling projects like this to happen, Yaz. It's no secret that the infrastructure sector kind of lags behind other areas of construction in terms of digital adoption. Why is that, and what role do you see digital collaboration and tools like Autodesk Build playing in enabling project teams who are faced with these huge infrastructure challenges, to kind of meet those challenges and succeed?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, Fred, for having me. So in construction in general, but specifically with like infrastructure projects, the industry itself is a very fragmented industry. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved, include infrastructure and include now the growth of population. There's a lot of communication that needs to happen. And with renovating or trying to improve the infrastructure, you have existing conditions that sometimes you probably have old data or built years ago that you have to deal with the as-builts. Things might change, then you probably have to do some also testing there. So bringing the designers, the engineering team, bringing the city and also the subcontractors and trades into that and communicating with them is really a challenge. So with technology, it's not just, it's been implemented a lot on the design side previously, but construction is also, was lagging and still, now is adopting it, on a expedited rate. So bringing all these parties together and managing the life cycle there is something really important, which I want to emphasize what Maria mentioned there, so that you don't also encounter that in the future. So you get the big challenge. On a high level, if you look at it, the infrastructure is the bloodline for the city, right? So whether it's water, sewer, tunnels, bridges, so it is being funded by tax money, and it's also going to impact tax money if you get delays, right? Because people are not doing their job correctly, or not going, or the society is not productive as they should be, right? So time is of an essence in the construction stage, and that's where every day that you can save with collaboration and preventing rework, quality communication between all the parties, especially if the project is going through years, is something with technology that can help a lot, and streamline all these processes, right? And make it simple and built on top of collecting all that data and take advantage of that data in the future. Because you do have technologies right now that can help you with dealing with existing conditions, which is a lot of the challenges that we have with old infrastructure. For example, point cloud and getting the existing conditions and build on top of that. And then you can want to take that and manage it as a life cycle throughout the entire phases of design, planning, construction, and operations, and also facilitate that for the future generation, right? Because you want to have accurate as-built, you want to have assets that you can track, and you want to be able to maintain it for whoever going to operate that facility, right? Whether it's a bridge, tunnel, or anything else, instead of having to reinvent the wheel over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with the population growth coming up, if we just stuck on the old-fashioned ways, we will not be able to scale with population demand, society, and civilization to maintain that bloodline.
Absolutely, yeah. So the idea is that in another 100 years' time, we're not encountering some of the problems that Maria spoke about now, because we've got digital records and digital information of the stuff that we've built. That's the idea, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I won't be around in 100 years to see if that's happened, but maybe our children's children can let us know. Hey, Maria, I want to get your insight as well, because you've been involved in some huge projects in and around this area, and indeed across the US. How have you seen digital tools and digital collaboration start to change the way that infrastructure and other projects get built?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think as you're getting to a BIM model or having a digital twin, Yaz talked about that operations and maintenance cycle. It will tell you, based on whatever that element is on the project, when it has to be replaced. So when you go in your budget process, all right, I need this many light bulbs, and I need this many bolts, and I need this many this, and it's going to streamline the ability to operate and maintain over long term. I think as you look at asset management, the more we have digital tools, we can take a look at how we get better life cycle out of individual areas that we have issues with during running an asset. But it becomes most important when you have to run scenarios, okay? Something goes south while you're in design or construction. I can give you a case in point, a number of projects with precast concrete, whether it was bridge decks or just in general precast, we're using fly ash for high early concrete. And then coal plants started shutting down over the US, and there was a shortage of fly ash, and you're in the middle of a project and you've got millions of yards and there's a shortage, and who's going to be on the short end of the stick? Okay. And so what do you use as a replacement? How do you use a new material? Things like that happen all the time in our industry. And, I kind of laugh when I look at the supply chain, look at something simple like toilet paper in the US. Now, granted, people were hoarding, okay? But it's a product that's grown in various parts of the US. It's manufactured mostly by computers, not, like other industries that were really hit during COVID that people couldn't come to work. Mostly it's automated, and it's distributed in the US, and we couldn't figure out toilet paper for 9 months in the US. So now start talking about real complicated systems like what you're seeing with automotive delivery and all the chips that go in there. We're going to see a huge transformation. I mean, crisis always breeds opportunity. And so we are going to see huge changes in how we deliver and a disruption in our industry that we haven't seen other industries have. So I'm actually really excited because, engineers want to roll up their sleeve and solve the problems, The other thing I'm going to go back to is I think as you're looking at stakeholder, the more that you are transparent to the communities, to the electeds about what you're doing, how you're doing, and when things are changing and why, you start rebuilding that trust. Because I think we've really gotten to a place that people really don't trust a lot these days, and we need to replace that trust quickly. And so the sooner we get some of these things online and we show that we're being effective and efficient, the better.
Yeah, people start to see and feel that difference in their lives. It's not like a hypothetical thing on the news. It's real for people. But Craig, how are you seeing it come into Amtrak's way of working as well? Are you seeing digital collaboration tools start to change the way? Is it helping?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked because we have been, we've been deploying some digital asset management tools, really specifically in the North River Tunnel, and it has helped us tremendously. We have launched a program, an interim reliability program. Basically, the tunnel is going to take 10 years or so let's say 8 years to build and then commission before we can move the existing traffic into the new tunnel. And in the meantime, while we're building that new tunnel, we need the 111-year-old tunnel to continue to function, right? So it has some needs. It's got, we have ballasted track in there, which is, does not drain very well. The drainage gets clogged. So we have a whole system of a whole program where we're going and making interim repairs, going in, ripping up the ballasted track, pulling up track panels, cleaning out the ballast, scraping out the drainage, and then putting that, we can't convert that. What we'd like to do is convert that to direct fixation track, right? That's ultimately what we're going to do. But we don't have the time to do that on nights and weekends. So we go back, we put in ballast, but the digital tools are helping us to identify hotspots where we're seeing the most failures, right? Because what we know is that when we have the ballasted track, sort of the water sort of sitting there in the ballast and the ballast is wet, we get signal problems, we get TOLs, train occupancy lights in the track there, we get broken rail, we get base rail corrosion. And through digital tools and asset management tools, we're able to now identify some of these hotspot areas, locations where we're having the most failures, the most asset failures, and then target our repairs to those most highly impacted locations. And that's it. That's a new innovation for us, really. It's a new, we're sort of retrofitting a lot of old infrastructure. So when we can take advantage of those kinds of tools, they're hugely beneficial and helpful to us, and that's something we want to continue to leverage going forward. Yeah.
Well, what a great example of tech making a difference to real stuff on the ground. That's fantastic. Now, guys, we're going to answer some of your questions now. Do get them coming in the Q&A feature of Zoom. First of all, we've got one coming in from Alexander, who asks, on projects of this scale in New York, how long is the typical design phase? How long is the typical environmental assessment phase? Given the utility conflicts in New York City, it must take longer than the typical 2-year design cycle. Am I correct in saying that? Going to kind of aim that at Maria to start with, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. I've actually worked on 2 NEPA, federal and seeker in New York recently, done them in other parts of the country. You can do it in 13 months and then go to a design build. I've done it twice in the last 7 years. That requires an incredible investment in stakeholder engagement. You have to have regular conversations with everyone, but time is money. And so, do you want to add, 0.5% up front and then cut a huge amount out of the construction cost? Because I'm going to remind everybody at the last ENR that I looked at, the construction cost index is 8% right now. That's a huge inflation cost. And so cutting just months off makes a huge impact. So I think it's doable. Do I want to do every job that way? No, because people are all in 7 days a week doing all kinds of crazy things. But when they're critical assets, it can be done. And, I'm talking from notice of intent to record of decision, and then basically within a month after that, awarding a design build contract. So it is doable, but it requires a whole different mindset from everybody involved.
Yeah, and that's the bit that's different, isn't it?
Can I add to that? I mean, because actually the Hudson Tunnel project is a good example of this. We at so our NEPA, we had to put together an EIS, an environmental impact statement, the most rigorous environmental analysis under NEPA for the Hudson Tunnel project, and we were very close to having that done in 2 years. That was our target time frame. Right before there was a change in political administration, and we were very close to getting that over the finish line, and then the brakes got put on the finalization of that document. But that's a $12 billion 10-year project that we we're literally weeks away from completing NEPA on in 2 years. So to Maria's point, 13 months may be a little bit aggressive for our project, and I think it does vary depending on scale and different projects. But it was a 2-year effort that normally, before could take twice as long as that. And to Maria's point, very much required a tremendous amount of coordination among the FRA, Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, all of the stakeholders involved. And it was a heavy lift, but it is doable, and it is important because time is money, and especially on a project like a 10-year project like this, inflation absolutely is a major, major factor for us.
Yeah, I've seen that on big infrastructure projects not just in the UK, but in Europe as well. You end up in a completely different economic moment in time to where you started from, and it's making that, getting a handle on that is key. Now, good questions coming from Simon, who's asked, what's being done to ensure that digital information and data can be easily transferred directly into operational and asset management systems rather than operations teams having to do this manually at handover? I'm going to kind of get everyone's input on this if I can. Maria, would you like to start us off?
Well, I think, again, when you're looking at one of these projects, you need to have that digital twin and the model being evolved. And we started with the Mario Cuomo Bridge, bringing the operations and maintenance people in at about 50% design into regular meetings to understand what's in and out, because that is the most instrumented bridge in the Americas. And, you don't want a whole lot of bells and whistles going off that people don't need or don't understand, because then they ignore everything, right? So part of that design had to be part of the people that were going to take it over and work through that process and have regular meetings to understand the decision process and what they felt was necessary, and quite frankly, bring people up to speed on systems they've never used before. So there's a huge training component there too. So I think that is really important. And, a manual handover is probably the worst thing you could do.
Completely agree. Yes. How are you seeing this from your perspective? Are you seeing teams digitize this process now?
Yes, it's actually a concern for all the industry. So this problem currently exists for example, healthcare, industrial, but also infrastructure is facing the same issue. And there's something we're trying to do now, but I can also shed some light into where the future is taking us, right? So right now, a lot of the technology is going towards the common data environment, right? And there's a reason for that. Take this project, for example, which is going to take years through the design phase all the way until you start operating the facility. There's a lot of data that's being created, and then you want to maintain that data and then transfer that between the stakeholders, for example, the design team to the construction team and the operation team, without handing USBs. I still have people handing USBs at the end of the project, which is a disaster when it comes to maintenance. So using asset management, for example, is something that's available as of today that would help the operation team, for example, get the commissioning done, get the construction phase finalized and turned over, but then it's ready to go list of assets for the operations team and facility management to take care of preventative maintenance, reactive maintenance, while having all the required information and as-built and O&M manuals and warranties in one location. Now, again, digital twin is coming up very quickly. Something to look at, but digital twin also gives you an idea about how the structure or the asset is being used by the tenants, whether it's like vehicles, people, water. So it gives you feedback to the engineering and design that was in place. So that's a big opportunity to optimize our mistakes or our design. We all do mistakes, right? So based on that data that we can collect, we should leverage that, because we can optimize our design and engineering going forward and see where like the peaks are, where did we do some mistakes that we can either learn from or provide a solution for it in a proactive manner, right? So that's one way to look at it. Now, think about it a little bit in the future. The computing power usually doubles, right? So every time you have the computing power doubles, there's usually some disruption in the industry. So once you have a combination of digital twins, sensors, and computing power doubling, then you'll be able to use AI and machine learning to exponentially expedite our optimization of our infrastructure and solutions and where the problems are coming from, or maybe get to the predictive side of digital twin and be more predictive in our designs.
Definitely. Craig, I guess this taps in some of the stuff you were saying earlier as well about that long-term operation process.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for an organization like Amtrak, which is, we scrape and claw for every dollar we can find, right? I mean, in order to keep the trains running, so I mean, it's been, I mean, that's been really the story of Amtrak's existence over the past 50 years, and so, when we talk about incorporating these digital tools, a lot of this stuff has to sort of, we have a lot of legacy systems that we've never really been able to make the capital investments that we need to really bring them into the modern era, really, in many cases. I mean, a lot of our systems are still very much kind of, like I said, really, date back to kind of these legacy railroads and sort of some of the way things had always been done. And, and so it's a real cultural change also for us in terms of, bringing some of these digital tools to our everyday operation. But we see the value for sure. Like I was just talking about earlier, I mean, in identifying hotspots on the railroad and interventions that we can make and targeting those. So absolutely, something that we want to continue to take advantage of.
Definitely. I remember my first job ever on a construction site. One of the tasks they gave me was to put together the paper operations and maintenance manual for the building we were building. And that I remember at the time, I think I was 19, 20 years old, just thinking, this is crazy. What am I doing? How is anyone going to refer to this in the future? So I'm completely behind the digitization of operational management systems, and shout out to anyone that's had to go through what I went through putting together a paper operation and maintenance manual, because I feel you. We're going to end with just one question, which is a really interesting one. This is about kind of politics and the association of politics to infrastructure. This has come from an anonymous attendee, which always bodes well. And they've said one of the challenges when we do infrastructure in New York and across the world in general is that the projects are often subject to the political wills and posturing of those in charge, can sometimes lead to excessive spending or rushing jobs in order to sort of show a result as quickly as possible. Is there a way, or is it feasible to try and insulate these projects from political saber rattling and kind of peacocking, is what he's saying, or she's saying? And I think that's tough with an infrastructure project because they tend to run for a long time and they span different governments and different kind of elected officials. It's a huge question. What do you think, Maria?
Well, as long as the infrastructure is public, welcome to our nightmare, right? You always have to consider the fact that you are going to have various different people involved and stakeholders. I'm going to go back to the fact that you have to invest the money and brief people on a regular basis. They have to understand, and that means sometimes that you have to take very complicated issues and explain them to whoever the elected is, whether it's a local, whether it's regional, whether it's state, or whether it's federal. You have to make sure that they understand there's always a spectrum of possibilities, right? If we do this, this is the upside, this is the downside risk. So getting communications down correctly and having people that are very technical but can bring it down to that level is incredibly important. When you have a mega project and you don't have a series of communicators that can do that, you can't isolate it. If there's public money in there, the electeds are going to have their fingers in it. It's that simple. So instead of waiting until they yell at you because they don't like something that's going on, you need to proactively engage and do it regularly and often. And again, I said this before, it's about building trust, that you are a trusted advisor and that you aren't trying to cover something, which means if something's going south, tell them about it before they read about it in the press. That's never a good day. I can tell you that. I've seen it happen to people. So, I mean, I think you have to remember that they're probably even more of a stakeholder because they've got a financial interest in what's going on, and they're going to, have to deal with the repercussions if something goes south. So they're one of your partners. You've got to engage regularly and transparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just echo everything Maria just said. I mean, as somebody who's sort of charged with some of that communicating, actually, I appreciate your words there, Maria. Yeah, I mean, and that is definitely our experience. I mean, in our case, at least on the Gateway program, I think we are very fortunate in that the facts speak for themselves. This project has got to happen. I mean, this is a 110-year-old infrastructure. It's the busiest part of the Northeast Corridor. I mean, I could go on. And so that is ultimately at the end of the day, that is a hugely powerful argument. I mean, and so, that's a benefit to us, but still we have to do a tremendous amount of explaining and re-explaining and re-explaining. And these are complicated questions and complicated issues that it does really help to be able to simplify and break out into digestible pieces. And there's no escaping it. I mean, these are political questions, right? These affect people's lives. I mean, this is absolutely the essence of infrastructure is about getting people where they want to go, and that's a political matter, And so the politicians and elected officials are just as important and involved in these things as the rest of us. And we have to continue. I think, like Maria said, continue to communicate with them and hopefully seek their support. Because they can be extremely powerful allies and advocates for us, on these projects. So, they are important players for sure.
Yeah, it's part of the job, right? Part of the job. This is all enabled by public taxpayer money. So the taxpayers and the people representing them have a right to know what's going on and to have it explained to them. It's part of our job as the industry to cater and serve that aspect of it, isn't it? Yeah, cool. Well, awesome, guys. It's been fantastic to answer as many of your questions as we can, guys, but also to hear from this fantastic panel today about some of the challenges around building in New York and indeed building infrastructure generally in the US. I think there's been some fantastic outcomes and learnings from this. Don't forget, anyone that's answered yes to the poll, Autodesk will be in touch with you to design and give you a personalized Autodesk build demonstration, which is going to be great. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's attended today and watched. Huge thank you to Maria, Craig, and Yaz also for being here as well. I've been hugely excited to chat to you guys. I could literally do this for hours. They're telling me to wrap up, but I could literally talk to you guys for hours. This is such an interesting topic. But thanks for being here. Huge thanks to Autodesk for enabling today. Thanks to everyone for watching. It is going to be available on demand, so you can watch this link and send it out to your friends and colleagues as well. But thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.